in the cloud. All right. Does it look like it looks like we're recording now? Okay. Excellent.
All right.
I'll turn it over to you in a second, Marty. But one of the big ISV relationships, potential partner relationships, scaling relationships that we've been working on for probably 5 or 6 months at this point is with Compuware, an actual Compuware integration solution with the overall Open Legacy platform that will enable both organizations to hopefully accelerate into account base, representing each of our solutions as a combined unified solution to address DevOps opportunities. And for those that aren't familiar with Compuware, Hans and or Marty, you guys can provide a bit of context and background on the organization. But we're about to basically release an overall press release from the combined organizations that's really very, very exciting. So with that, I will turn it over to Marty to take us through some of the overview slides of what the value, the impact is of the combined solution set out into the market space. So Marty, you want to take it from there?
Sure, I'm happy to take it. And Hans, feel free to add any color commentary. It only helps to hear a couple voices as well. Even though we didn't plan it that way, I'm more than happy to.
My commentary is always colorful, so don't worry about that.
Okay, so we're announcing the partnership in a press release October 1st, so this coming week. And then Hans or I, depending upon if Hans is stuck somewhere, we're doing sales enablement for the Compuware team on October 3rd. These slides are based a little bit on what they're doing, what we're presenting to them, but they're also focused differently. I think there's a huge potential opportunity. We'll hit on why in a few minutes. And you're probably going to get some questions from prospects and customers due to the press release, due to the fact that Compuware is going to be talking about this, hopefully, this solution to their customers. And so let's first discuss who is Compuware. They're a large mainframe company focused in business since 1973, and really their tagline is mainstream your mainframe with Compuware. They're all about like DevOps and developer tools is what they have. It's called Topaz, is their main product line that we focus on, which is a developer tool product line, and it supports DevOps for the mainframe. So they're already in most of your accounts, prospects and customers that are in the mainframe world, and the products overall align very well. And really what we want to say is they compete against ZOS Connect, and that's where they're seeing their problem. Their customers want to expose data, want to have APIs, and that's where they see they lose business to IBM sometimes. And so they see us as a competitive advantage to make sure to keep those customers together. So some takeaways to think about for them is both companies love the mainframe and compete against IBM and generally doing nothing. So you have anything to add there, Hans, about Compuware?
Sorry, was on mute. No, you covered it well. Chris Malley and all that, the CEO of Compuware, they are huge proponents of the mainframe, securing the mainframe. The mainframe's not going anywhere. He is constantly out there blogging and on LinkedIn and those things. So there is a powerful message in this sort of mainframe to microservices story that Open Legacy with Compuware, and again, you probably cannot go into a mainframe shop that does not have some Compuware product. So for the Compuware people, it could be a compelling event to have a conversation. For us, if we're talking to a mainframe shop, ask them. We assume you're working with some of the Compuware products. And they might say no or whatever, but at least it allows you to have that conversation of what we're doing with them, why it's important, why it's relevant. So again, this I think can help open a lot of doors for us.
That's great. And you mentioned Chris O'Malley, so he's we got a quote from him that's a little longer quote than even this, but I wanted to take the pieces of it. They're really excited to collaborate with us. They think that this integration with Topaz empowers their customers. So that's the general idea. And Jason Blueberg, the analyst who just spoke in our webinar this week, also said this was a big relationship that was really helpful to both companies. And so that's that's part of this whole launch. It's an analyst talking about it, and their CEO of a pretty good sized company really wanted to be involved and have a quote for it from it. So to me, that's huge. So why should we leverage the relationship? And this is something that Hans just sort of hit on. They'll open doors. They're a trusted vendor. They really involve legacy teams in a positive way. A lot of times we say you don't have to work with legacy teams because we generate Java, but you still want them to take a buy-in. And so this is a huge thing. If they see a plugin directly to it, they're just going to say that's a very positive thing. We can work with their sales contact. We can do things like that. We plan on doing some marketing campaigns, but there's no need to wait. The plugin is working. We can do the work. We just need those first couple customers for it. And a customer really talked about TJX, which you mentioned earlier. It's one of our prospects who's a Compuware customer. And obviously, I won't go through the whole bio about TJX, but they're a pretty big company whose Hans had used some contacts to actually get us into. But it sort of stalled a little bit because we were talking to them in the spring, just because they didn't figure out where they're going to use it, everything else. We mentioned this integration, and now all of a sudden they're really jumping to it and excited about it. And the plugin they think is going to ease their adoption for what they're doing. And one of the big features that this talks about is that Topaz makes it easy to find the metadata, the copybooks in large systems. We'll hit on that a little more, the importance of discovery, which is something we haven't talked about. That's a limitation, I guess. I won't say in our tools, but just it's something we haven't focused on. We'll hit on why that's important.
Just a quick sort of commentary. If you look at TJX, which runs a huge mainframe installation, has lots of different teams and silo teams, and the teams we're working off are COBOL developers. Now, the reason they're excited about this is that those teams of COBOL developers, their job is to provide services to other parts of the company. As with their move to the cloud, they need to provide to that project APIs now. So the excitement that TJX is feeling here is that the COBOL programmers, the people that know the back-end systems, they are now heavily involved in using our tools, or will be using our tools, not just in the mainframe and maintaining and supporting and enhancing their core bread and butter, heart and lung machine applications, but also involved in extending the usage outside of the mainframe and exposing those things. So this is, I think once we get into these sort of larger shops, you're going to see a lot of this sort of messaging where the mainframe still owns anything that is mainframe based. And this is a tool that's going to help them drive to speed and velocity, which is core to our messaging.
I agree completely. And this has been some stuff that's been missing a little bit of our messaging, and because it's hard to do and catch up. But Compuware really can catch us up quickly on some of this, and that's why this is a huge integration. So this sort of breaks down those different things we already sort of talked about. Compuware is already in those shops. Their main competition is IBM. They really want to work with us because so is ours. And they really fill the front end and back end gaps. And we'll hit on this a little more. How do you find the metadata? How do you find the right COBOL copybooks in hundreds of thousands? If you have 4,000 of them or something like that, which ones we actually need to use? They're already in there, and their tool allows you to find them easily. And also debugging. As we get into more complicated integrations where you have to debug through like the templates in Java and things like that in the integration to the legacy system, how do you debug those things both together? They're an Eclipse platform that does debugging of things like COBOL. There's some huge benefits there for the whole workflow. And that just generally means their products integrate into our flow very well. And their messaging is DevOps focused for the mainframe. It's exactly like our message is DevOps focused for the APIs from the mainframes. So they work very well together. And how will the partnership work? That's a good question. And really, we're going to be, they're not looking to resell. They're looking to basically just pass leads to us whenever they find them. Their goal is to solve their customers' problems. If you hear a prospect uses Compuware, you can leverage that integration in your own discussions. And you can ask if they use it, bring up the integration. This is stuff we already talked about. This is not a reseller agreement. This is just a partnership agreement. Anything else you want to add there, Hans?
No, I mean, we've talked about COS Connect sometimes, and or Marty has. When they talk about trying to solve their customers' problems, they hear all the pain that their customers are having with ZOS Connect. And because of ZOS Connect being painful, slow, lots of boulders that need to be moved, and that slows down some of their initiatives, slows down some of their DevOps, slows down things that their customers are trying to accomplish. They see this as a way to sort of say, yeah, a lot of our customers are complaining about ZOS Connect. Have you thought about this open legacy thing to bypass some of that? It's a plug-in into our technology. Let me direct you to those guys. Now, you know, Compuware has no interest in learning all the ecosystem of APIs and microservices and all that. But to fair warning, their salespeople, like the one I'm dealing with at TJX, has been working for them for over 35 years. They know the mainframe space inside and out. They know how to talk mainframe. They know that environment. They don't know the environments outside of that space. So it has to be a sort of hand in glove scenario between our salespeople and their salespeople. But we have to understand where the borders are.
Quick question, Shane. Do we know if the reps get comped on an open legacy lead or introduction?
No, currently I don't believe there is any cross comping for the sales reps.
Okay.
I know there was some kind of benefits that was discussed, but I think they're still talking about it, what they want to do, Compuware. And that's probably.
Hans, has that been raised recently? Because I haven't been actively.
No, we had you and I had a conversation with Paul a few months ago. I mean, they don't sell their plugins. I mean, they have lots of plugins. You will, if you start following Compuware, every quarter they have new plugins that are being built into their environment. They are not necessarily selling those, and from our conversation with Paul, they don't get any money for those.
Okay.
And that was my understanding. So it helps. I mean, in the case of TJX, they're excited about this. This is actually some add-on sale business for the Topaz sales guy, because now they're buying the full stack of the Topaz DevOps environment.
And there's
and that's what I was going to, excuse me, Marty, that's what I was going to add is what makes this interesting to the reps at Compuware is that not all of their customers have adopted the DevOps mainframe modules. And so this is a software expansion for them as part of the open legacy deal that we're working on with TJX. So, you know, Eric Florence, who's the rep at Compuware, is very excited about the prospects because this is upside for him that he hadn't forecasted earlier in the year.
Perfect, Pedro. That's perfect. Thank you.
So the good news is we're not worried about sort of cross compensation or any type of confusing stuff. I mean, unless something changes, and also that it helps them take out IBM in some places, maybe where they're starting to lose to IBM a bit, which is a huge thing I think for them as well. So I'll just put through all these, but the main point here is the use cases. We create mainframes, and we don't have to go through all of this, but the initiatives, the approach is extending the value of the mainframe by applying microservices, stuff we already talked about, and the process is plugging in microservices to existing Topaz environment. So the whole idea is that we can plug into them and just generate out APIs in the whole management and all the other stuff. We're doing pretty much everything we usually do, but the nice thing is because it's Eclipse, it'll just look like a plugin to their people. Makes it easier for us to get adopted. And this is our typical slide, adding in a couple of their tools. They have the Topaz tool here, and then they also have some of their other ones which actually do configuration management, storage, and then they also some stuff for deployment and their DevOps tools, their ISPW tool that all kind of fit right into our process. But we get to do everything we usually do, which is a great thing with this integration. So, I'm not going to go through all of this, but the idea is that they have a bunch of different tools that plug in and work with us. There's the analyze and identify, which is all about identifying for us, identifying those Cobalt copybooks and all those different elements. And then there's basically our plugin, which then generates out everything they need. And then there's the whole debugging and testing part. And then there's deployment and management with the microservices, which we do a lot of ourselves. And they have some DevOps tools that can help with that process. So when you look at here,
just Marty, if you go back one slide, I mean, and this doesn't really sort of represent it, and we do have screen prints. Omar, who is I think on the call also, he pulled together a video sort of walking through this. But one of the things to keep in mind is that the analyze, the identify, the debug, and deploy, these are all sexually visual things. They're you know, they are what developers want to see now. They're sexy. They're, you know, drag and drop and moving cursors around and all that. It doesn't look like, you know, the classic mainframe developer's environment.
Yeah, and
that's something that you know, really sort of is an appealing thing to our story, is saying, oh, here's the Cobalt copybook for add account. Let me grab that and let me move that here. Let me see what's there. Let me see what test data I need. Let me see this. It becomes very visual. So it's visual to API, visual to microservice types of stories that we're talking about.
And this slide here kind of shows that. That's why I jumped to here, because you can actually see basically what copybooks you're having, the relationships between different elements, and then from there, with this visualization, we can then plug in and just basically generate our stuff out from it. It makes it much easier for people to follow the whole workflow of that whole system. So this slide here was the one that was really sort of describing that process and the benefits there.
Okay.
And I'll go back a little bit. This sort of explains the whole process of discovery, identification, and then deployment. And really, the whole point is that we complement each other really well. And that was what everyone was very impressed with through the whole process, working with TJX and working directly with them. There's no real overlap. I mean, there's great overlap, but no overlap between our products and how they actually do it. But great working together. And I won't spend too much more on this, but the idea is that you sort of click inside their tool and then generate out our stuff immediately. And in the end result, and this sort of hits on IBM a little more, and it's most of the same message we already use for IBM, but you know, you actually get the ability to have a Microsoft-enabled solution, open standards, all the stuff we always talked about, any runtime environment, end-to-end solution, and high performance. That's all the stuff we usually always talk about, but now you're getting it inside of that environment that we were sort of missing before, which is actually that environment for the that environment for the mainframe developers. So it's a huge benefit there. It makes it much easier for the adoption as part of the process, which is where IBM sometimes was beating us, because they have that system where they're actually already in with the mainframe developers. And that's about it. Anything else to finish up, Hans?
And let's open it up for questions. If there are any questions from the team.
This is Gus. I really haven't been involved a lot in this integration that we've done. From the technical aspect, I guess I'm gonna have Omer set up a session so that all of us can get a quick walkthrough of what has been done. But in the meantime, can we get that video that you guys just talked about?
Yes, we'll make sure. So I'm gonna send out this recording as well as the video demo and the 2 sets of slide decks, and we'll send those out to everybody in the company.
In terms of distribution of the distribution of this plugin, are we Topaz Open Legacy is a plugin to Topaz, or is Topaz a plugin to Open Legacy, or how is that being architecture?
I think the concept is that we are a plugin into Topaz. Omar can probably give you more of the technical things, but it's pretty much Topaz is an Eclipse-based product, and we're a plugin into that, just like there are other plugins to Topaz for testing and documentation, all sorts of things like that.
Hey, this is George. I got a question. What is going to be the commercial approach in terms of the help that we are going to provide to them? How far is it going to go? Are we going to run POCs together with them, or are we just going to train them? How is it going to work?
So everything is going to be direct. So we'll obviously work with them as closely as we can, but they'll need to engage us just like we would engage in any opportunity, whether it be MuleSoft, AWS, or Apogee. We'll need to represent ourselves and support the entirety of the sales cycle.
Okay.
Who's the point person for the relationship with Alexa transitioning, Shane?
Right now it's between myself and Hans, but we're, part of the updates is we're actively looking to put in place a head of global ISVs. And so, ultimately all of these relationships will roll up into that person.
Are we going to be able to get exposure into, some sort of territory plan in which we can talk about with their regional managers or whatever, where we're at, and try and compare notes in terms of where we're at and see if we can partner?
So Hans is giving a presentation. When is the presentation, Hans?
October 3rd, we're doing their field sales sort of. The press release is coming out in the 1st, so they have a standard sort of cadence for this every quarter. So October 3rd, we're sort of giving an overview of Open Legacy. They do have an annual sort of sales kickoff where they have brought partners in. We wanted to try to get into that last February or March, but it was way too premature. But yes, we do want to do account planning and strategizing and talk to salespeople and see where there is synergies and where we can drive. And that would be driven mostly through Paul, who is their partner guy.
So I think to answer your question, Pedro, I don't believe that it's been locked down specifically, but it should be something that we discuss with Paul prior to the, the sales, the overview to their sales organization, and how we would go about working through opportunities and regional alignment. So Hans, let's make a note of that and have a discussion with Paul prior to. If we can get their regional sales map and align to their sales team globally, that's what we should try and do.
Guys, do we have a sense of the average selling price of these onboarding on-ramp kind of opportunities with Compuware?
So this will be our traditional pricing model and approach. And as we're working through to figure out what our average sale price will look like, it should follow along for to be pretty close to what would be represented in the Compuware opportunities. Good questions. Good questions across the board. Other questions?
Yeah, I was asking, is like from the Compuware perspective, this is Chad, from the Compuware perspective, is this like an upsell for in there? Is it still going to be branded Open Legacy and all that?
It's all branded Open Legacy. We're going to direct. We're a plug-in option. So we're solutioning together. Behind the scenes, it's not yet a developed product. Part of this is to get the message out there, get the solution out there, gauge interest, and as we continue to generate traction like TJX, then it'll give the opportunity for both organizations to invest more heavily in really tying together the combined products into a unified solution. But at this point, everything's going to be direct. We'll handle all of the sales activity. It's really an opportunity for visibility from a large organization like Compuware. It gives them the ability, as Pedro mentioned, it opens up extended software sales opportunities for them around DevOps modules that aren't currently in place in their customer base. And so that's really what the primary opportunity is at this point.
Thanks.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Marty, Hans. I know everyone's put a lot of hard work into this. Omer and Roy and the whole R&D team has put a lot of time and effort into it. Pedro and Hans from a TJX perspective. And as Marty mentioned, that continues to pick up speed. You know, we met with them last week, we're meeting with them again next week. And I think, you know, as we see with many of these ISVs, whether it be Compuware, AWS, Apogee, MuleSoft, really the opportunity is to position against IBM and to represent us as the solution for deconstructing the legacy assets and deconstructing the monolith, deconstructing the mainframe. And we're the only ones that can deliver on that for them. So it represents significant value in each of their respective business models. So everyone should be very comfortable with telling that supporting story as these scalable opportunities really start to ramp up and we start to see more and more traction across these large ISV organizations. So I'm going to stop the recording there.